Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to episode 3 of the Marvel Annotated podcast. Now, on this episode, we'll go over the casting for She-Hulk, Black Widow potentially premiering on Disney Plus in the United States, the Spider-Man Miles Morales gameplay, and how She-Hulk may be introduced to the MCU. Now, overall, it's a rather jam-packed episode compared to previous weeks, and if you're listening to this on YouTube, the first 3 segments are uploaded at 4 p.m., 6 p.m., and 8 p.m. respectively, all Eastern Time. And if you'd like to hear the full audio version with a bonus 4th segment, follow the podcast on either Spotify or SoundCloud. Links should be in the video descriptions, but you can also search on either Spotify or SoundCloud for Marvel Annotated. And those versions are published at noon Eastern Time, same day respectively. And by same day, I mean Tuesday, since this podcast is scheduled to come out every Tuesday going forward. I'm really excited to get into these topics. So with all that said and done, let's get into it. So for our first topic here, we have Tatiana Maslany cast as She-Hulk. Now, recently, Marvel Studios has been on a tear with a lot of announcements after being super silent, actually, for quite some time. You know, the previous week, in the previous episode, I should say, we talked about how Kang the Conqueror was cast, which was a huge deal, obviously, because that more or less is an announcement for the upcoming main villain, you'd believe, for phase 4, 5, maybe even 6. And that was Jonathan Majors, who has been getting a lot of traction due to his leading role essentially on Lovecraft Country. Now, focusing on She-Hulk again, Marvel Studios announced the hiring of Dead to Me director Kat Coiro, and I hope I said that name right. But she, alongside of Rick and Morty writer Jessica Gao, were announced for She-Hulk. And from that momentum, they decided to capitalize on it with this announcement of Tatiana for the title role of She-Hulk. Now, for those who aren't too familiar with her, she was Emmy nominated for a previous role on Orphan Black, and currently, as of me recording this, can be seen on HBO's Perry Mason. Now, production for She-Hulk is set to start in Atlanta in early 2021, and they've all but confirmed at this point that the gamma form for She-Hulk will be CGI. Mark Ruffalo is believed to likely make a cameo appearance as Bruce Banner / Hulk, since the last update we got on that was him being in talks. But we haven't gotten any confirmation if he actually signed a dotted line since then, but I'm more likely than not to believe he did, just because Mark Ruffalo is one of those actors that seems to legitimately have a blast in the time of his life doing this role of Bruce Banner. He's also one of the few founding Avengers that is still alive as well. And I feel like they would not have gone out of their way to leave his character alive. I mean, they knew they were going to do She-Hulk, so maybe that's why. But I don't think they would leave the character alive without first talking to Mark Ruffalo and confirming with him that he'd be open to maybe coming back in the future. Because otherwise, you know, they easily could have had the whole character deceased after using the Infinity Gauntlet and made that a complete character arc. And it would have worked for all intents and purposes, I think. So I find it hard to believe Mark Ruffalo isn't going to reappear. He also tweeted out with a lot of enthusiasm his support and excitement for the casting. So I want to say he'll likely more than not at least do a cameo for like one episode. Now, in the comics, after an accident / injury, Bruce's cousin, Jennifer Walters, receives a blood transfusion, which turns her into the gamma mutate She-Hulk. And usually she's depicted as basically kind of like a your traditional like Amazonian bodybuilder, like woman kind of physique. Like that's kind of usually how she's drawn and everything, but with green skin, obviously. The only real difference I would say that's noticeable between She-Hulk and the Hulk is the fact that She-Hulk is more likely than not usually drawn and written with maintaining her intelligence, not really descending into savagery, like the regular Hulk does. However, in recent appearances, she has gotten a more savage form. She also had a more updated gray She-Hulk form, which I actually really enjoyed. And basically that was depicted from a trauma that she went through fighting Thanos. And after that trauma, alongside of insecurity and other things, she, instead of turning to a regular She-Hulk form, turned into a more bulkier gray She-Hulk form. And the really cool thing about that, alongside the grayish green skin, was the fact that this form had like a kind of like tears across the skin and like stretch marks, if you will, that glowed green. So I always thought that just looked really cool altogether. And I always hoped if they were to do a She-Hulk, they would use that to really kind of change things up visually instead of just doing basically another green skin Hulk. And the reason I say that is because if you go back to Age of Ultron, and Joss Whedon is on the record mentioning this, but they wanted to do Grey Hulk in that action sequence in South Africa. And the whole thing that was supposed to set up it is basically Scarlet Witch messes with the Hulk's mind. And they were going to introduce from there, I guess, the different personas of the Hulk, depending on Bruce Banner's mental state. And basically, that was going to be the introduction to the MCU's Grey Hulk. However, the Marvel Creative Committee at the time axed the idea because they thought it'd be too confusing for audiences, which I tend to agree. You know, unless you're able to properly explore that kind of concept in something like a Disney Plus, Netflix, whatever TV series adaptation of the MCU Hulk, unless you can explore that, a lot of people aren't going to grasp the rather complicated concepts of the multiple Hulks. So I definitely think that was a good idea in hindsight, but unfortunately that took away getting a Grey Hulk. Since then, we know they're going to do Thunderbolts in the MCU going forward, and a part of the Thunderbolts team, which they didn't have to do, so I'm actually really excited and shocked at the same time they're going to do it, is Red Hulk. Now, Thunderbolt Ross will be the Red Hulk, presumably, and introducing that means that they are comfortable now introducing different skin color Hulks. Now, if you're going to do a Red Hulk, and we already have a Green Hulk, I mean, for She-Hulk, it obviously is the easiest thing in the world to also make her, green, since she is traditionally green in the comics. But if they want to further make Jennifer Walters' incarnation of the Hulk a little more unique, I think just not only visually unique, but just, straight out the gate unique, I would do the Gray She-Hulk form, where it has like the tears and the stretch marks across her body that also glow green. If that series is going to, let's say, explore things like trauma and insecurity, things like that, I think it works out really well, since that was kind of the backbone behind why this new form was taking prominence with Jennifer Walters versus her traditional form. And then, of course, she in recent comics as well has gotten a more traditional Hulk-like form where basically she transforms into like a savage green Hulk. And, I think they kind of moved on past that now. They've kind of reverted more to the status quo as of me recording this. But I just want to throw that idea out there in terms of that. Now, for the villain of the series, they haven't announced any villains officially, but a lot of people are theorizing they're going to do like the Red Hulk maybe. Personally, I really hope to do the Leader. I think the Leader would be a great way to go about it. And of course, you could still do the Red Hulk and Red She-Hulk and, not really Abomination. I don't really see them bringing him back, but you could, and that'd be cool as well. I definitely would do the Leader just because I think Samuel Stearns is the villain that's getting a lot of attention right now in the Marvel Comics. If you're reading the Immortal Hulk series, he's kind of like the main bad right now in the storyline. And they've done some really cool stuff with his character alongside of that to make him the new big bad of the Hulk comics. I say new, but kind of like the new old big bad. And at the same time, I think the Leader appropriately also gives you a solid gateway, not only as a villain for She-Hulk and the Hulk respectively, and a gateway that connects to the Incredible Hulk movie that a lot of people have forgotten at this point about, but the Leader gives you an avenue to connect to Abomination if you want, either making a new Abomination or getting the old one back. At the same time, it allows you to make a seemingly Marvel Comics faithful, yet allows you to do a lot of flexible things to make it your own for the MCU. Avenue to introduce how they're going to do the Red Hulk in the MCU universe. I mean, it just gives you a lot to play with, I think, as a villain. And then also at the same time, he not only is someone who is, physically like, I'm a gamma mutate, I'm going to fight you, physical, bulky, strong, but he's smart, and that's his whole thing. So he can make those physical villains, if it's a new Abomination or an A-bomb or whatever you want to call it, for the most part. I mean, he can make those villains to fight for Hulk or She-Hulk. And at the same time, he could be your scheming mastermind behind the scenes. So I think there's just a lot of potential there. I would love to see them do, especially since I think the actor did an interview not too long ago admitting that he is still under contract by Marvel and willing to reprise the role of Samuel Stearns. So I just feel like if that's true, You know what I mean? Like, if that is true, then go for it. It is what it is. And yeah, so let's get on to the next segment. And that's it for this episode of Marvel Annotated, the podcast. Leave your comments down below, your thoughts. What other topics would you like to see us explore in the future? At the same time, don't forget to check it out on Spotify and SoundCloud if you're listening to the YouTube segments. As well, this series comes out every Tuesday, so stay tuned every Tuesday at 4, 6, and 8 p.m. Eastern Time for these segments to upload. If you're a fan of Marvel, and just leave comments down below on what you would like to see us talk about on the next episode next Tuesday. And with that said and done, I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you guys later.